So Dhaniya, the cattleman, says, "The rice is cooked, my milking done. I live with my people along the banks of the Mahi. My hut is roofed, my fire lit. So if you want, rain, God, go ahead and rain." And the Buddha replies, "Free from anger, my stubbornness gone. I live for one night along the banks of the Mahi. My hut's roof is open, my fire out. So if you want, rain, God, go ahead and rain." Dhaniya says, "No mosquitoes or gadflies are to be found. The cows range in the marshy meadow where the grasses flourish. They could stand the rain if it came. So if you want, rain God, go ahead and rain." The Buddha replies, "A raft, well made, has been lashed together. Having crossed over, gone to the far shore, I've subdued the flood. No need for a raft is to be found. So if you want, rain God, go ahead and rain." Dhaniya replies, "My wife is compliant, not careless, is charming, has lived with me long. I hear no evil about her at all. So if you want, rain God, go ahead and rain." The Buddha, "My mind is compliant, released, has long been nurtured, well tamed. No evil is to be found in me. So if you want, rain God, go ahead and rain." Dhaniya, "I support myself on earnings. My sons live in harmony, free from disease. I hear no evil about them at all. So if you want, rain God, go ahead and rain." The Buddha, "I'm in no one's employment. I wander the whole world on the reward of my awakening. No need for earnings is to be found. So if you want, rain God, go ahead and rain." Dhaniya, "There are cows, young bulls, cows in calf and breeding cows, and a great bull, the leader of the herd. So if you want, rain God, go ahead and rain." The Buddha, "There are no cows, no young bulls, no cows in calf or breeding cows, no great bull, the leader of the herd. So if you want, rain God, go ahead and rain." Dhaniya, "The stakes are dug in, immovable. The new munja grass halters. The new munja grass halters, well woven, not even young bulls could break. So if you want, rain God, go ahead and rain." The Buddha, "Having broken my bonds like a great bull, like a great elephant tearing a rotten vine, I never again will lie in the womb. So if you want, rain God, go ahead and rain." The great cloud rained down straight away, filling the lowlands and high. Hearing the rain God pour down, Dhaniya said, "How great our gain that we've gazed on the Blessed One. We go to him, the one with vision, for refuge. May you be our teacher, great sage. My wife and I are compliant. Let's follow the holy life under the one well gone. Gone to the far shore of aging and death. Let's put an end to suffering and stress." Then Mara says, "Those with children delight because of their children. Those with cattle delight because of their cows. A person's delight comes from acquisitions, since a person with no acquisitions does delight." And the Buddha replies to Mara, "Those with children grieve because of their children. Those with cattle grieve because of their cows. A person's grief comes from acquisitions, since a person with no acquisitions doesn't grieve." Okay, so that's a quick run through on this sutta. And it's a conversation between the Buddha and a particular person that he's met along the way. And it's very, I was saying the other day to a friend that it's very like a Milarepa song, and it's very bold and essentialized. You know, it's not teaching you about things like the Four Noble Truths or the Eightfold Path. It's just saying, you know, you're basing all your security here, and basically the rains are going to wash it away. Or no matter what you do, no matter how hard you try, you cannot stop certain things from happening. So this is the sort of territory we're going into. And yeah, I particularly wanted us to look at this because it does highlight so much the Buddha's, you know, who the Buddha was in essence, and well, his enlightened experience or his enlightened consciousness. Yeah, so Abante also gave a seminar on this material 40 years ago in 1980 at Padmaloka. So it's quite old. The order is 10 years. How old will it be then? Maybe it's about 10 years old, and it's still working out how to put its socks on at this point. I think it's still trying to work out some quite fundamental things. There's a lot of seminar that's just putting down the basics of our order and our movement, which is also very touching and revealing to read. Yeah, but the pages that you've got in front of you are only about a third, I think, of the actual whole seminar. So do check in with that seminar if you want. And the conversation we've got here is of a human being, an unenlightened person, if you like, a human being having a conversation with an enlightened consciousness, or a kind of a vertical dimension kind of crashing into that person's life, which can happen in different ways, actually. And I've been thinking about my practice of sadhana, and you know, you get this idea of all these blessings coming down from the Buddha, and the light coming off him, and well, from all sadhanas, the blessings coming through the light and the golden light, or whatever it is. And I thought, I've never had an experience of sadhana like that when I've done the Shakyamuni sadhana. It's much, much more about challenge. I mean, basically, he's like the Buddha in this sutta. He's sort of holding up a mirror and saying, you need to change your life, basically. You know, you're investing in false refuges. You need to change that. What does it mean to resource yourself with true refuges rather than the false ones? You're standing on very precarious ice. I mean, this is what I'm getting from the Buddha the whole time. I mean, when I hear people say, oh, it's just all golden light and everything, I say, no, that's not the Buddha that I know. Yeah, I might put up more of a fight than other people. It's possibly true. And yeah, I'd like to encourage us all to engage with this study as if it's a sadhana practice. I mean, whenever we do a sadhana, whatever sadhana we're doing, what it is we're coming into relationship with something a vertical dimension of life. We're coming into relationship with something that's trying to show us a different way of being. It's trying to show us something, and it's up to us to stand in relationship to that experience. When I do my sadhana, I always see the Buddha in profile. So I always see him side on. I once said to my preceptor that I never saw the Buddha face on, and she said, it's probably hard for anyone to face reality straight on, Saddhanandi. And it's partly that, and it's partly because when I go into the sadhana, I approach the Buddha, I circumambulate, keeping the Buddha to my left, and then sit down at one side. And that's how I see him. And so when I'm doing the sadhana, I'm actually doing a sadhana which has got a big drama to it. It's got the enlightened consciousness, the Buddha, and it's got discipleship, me. I'm not visualizing me, but just the fact that I'm seeing the Buddha's side on means that I'm in relationship to him in the position, if you like, of the disciple. So this is what I'm visualizing. So in some ways, the whole myth or drama of being a disciple of the Buddha is extremely prominent in my life. Yeah. My whole life, in terms of the path of responsibility, is based on the discipleship aspect of my sadhana practice. Yeah, so we can see all this study that we're doing over the next few days as being a sadhana practice. It's us coming into contact. And the conversation that we see being mirrored in the text is between us and the Buddha. Go beyond where you are. Give up false refuges that are wasting you. Focus on authentic refuges that are worthy of investment. So quite early on, Dhaniya is saying, roofed is my hut. The fire burns bright. So it can rain as much as it likes. I'll be safe and warm inside. So basically, he's communicating all the way through. He's got nothing to worry about. He's got his security sorted out, yes? He's got a pension. He's got life insurance. He's got a roof, yeah? I mean, I think part of the drama of this story, which you don't get necessarily in this text, but I think some of the commentaries pull this out, is that the Buddha has seen by a kind of divine eye almost, that this area is going to get flooded by the rains. So actually he's not as safe as he thinks. So the Buddha's gone to Dhaniya really to sort of rescue the guy. But actually, well, it's interesting. He's living near this big river and the rains are coming. That's what he's sort of, standing up against. And this is what his security is sort of battling with. There were huge areas around Adhisthana that were flooded in, was it only in January? I remember driving around and there was all this light everywhere, light all across the country, as far as I could see. And I didn't believe it, but it was the water reflecting the sky. And it was like looking over a sea. And huge areas of Herefordshire were completely flooded. And there were times when, I was driving down roads and the car in front of me was just getting deeper and deeper and deeper into water, and then we were just turning around and coming back. There was no, you couldn't get through certain roads. It was very, very frightening. So we live with this. We live with this a lot more than we realise. This existential kind of insecurity is there all the time in us. Yeah. Yes, but we think we're okay because we've got a roof. And we've got nothing to worry about. Whatever life throws at us, we've got everything sorted out. And Bhante uses an interesting image. He says in the seminar that Dhaniya is living in a shell. He's created his own shell. And I think this comes out in other areas of the Pali Canon as well. That you're cocooned in a shell of self. And it comes out quite well in actually one of those papers. Might have been, one of those papers that came out. Well, sorry, there's 7 papers where you surround yourself with a lot of possessions, and that reflects back who you are. It's a bit like you think you have a yoga practice because you've got a yoga book on your shelf. Yeah. We've got views about who we are. We've got a security from that, and then we've got possessions all around us that shore up that view of ourselves. Okay, so the Buddha replies, open my hut, cooled down my fire, so it can rain as much as it likes. So what he's saying here is he's not investing in a roof to keep him safe. The thatch is open. This is what you get in the Udana. The thatch is off, the thatch is open. And it's an interesting metaphor. I don't know if people find this inspiring, this idea of the roof being off or the thatch being open. But it'd be interesting in the group to just explore, what does that really mean? Like, what is open? Because it obviously doesn't mean you have to live in a house that doesn't have a roof. It doesn't mean that. So what does it really mean? What is open? What is off? And, comes back to this shell or this cocoon that we're trying to create for ourselves. Do we really believe that to break that open would be a stronger sense of security? You know, what are we trying to, you know, what is he really getting at? Let's just try and explore that a bit more. And the Buddha also says, cooled down my fire. So instead of building his fire up to protect him, his fire is cool. So what is cool? So these are the passions, greed, hatred, and delusion, and all that comes from it. Nirvana is a cooling down. So again, an interesting area. Do you really believe that working with greed, hatred, and delusion is a good resource? Or is it just to make your life a bit more comfortable? Yeah, many years ago, actually, when I'd first moved, it was when I first moved to Taraloka, so it was in 1995, 96. There was a few people in our movement that had just resigned from very substantial positions of responsibility, like chairman, and then they'd disappeared. You know, they'd gone on a wide orbit and weren't involved in the movement for quite a long time. And I remember thinking, oh, what does it take to be involved in the movement for a long time and not leave with resentment, or leave with leave by burning out and regretting the decisions that you'd made? And I thought, God, I'm going to have to really use this opportunity. I'm going to have to really invest in the right things, because fame, reputation, all of that isn't going to stand by me in 10 years' time or 20 years' time, or when I want to move on. And then you become a nobody again, having held areas of responsibility. So what am I going to invest in now that means that that's not going to happen to me? So what are we investing in terms of resourcing ourselves? Where are we creating security in our lives? Yeah, a whole aspect, a whole discussion in the seminar happens between the difference between gratification of desires and true positivity. So things can be going well for us and we can feel positive and happy and confident. And then a few things need to change, and before you know it, you feel very different. So that hasn't been a strong basis of positivity. That's been something else. That's just been a happy life based on things going well. I can't remember the name of the sutta. I'll have to ask Dhammamai the name of the sutta. There's a lovely sutta where the Buddha's describing how you can never tell different qualities of a person until you go into certain areas with them. So you know a person's integrity when you work with them, because work draws out our dishonesty or our willingness to kind of manipulate. Or you can't really understand a person's kindness until you've lived with them. So the different areas draw us out, yeah? Different conditions draw us out in different ways. And sometimes we create a life which doesn't challenge us, and we live in conditions that draw out fairly nice qualities, but it means we don't really know ourselves, and other people don't really know us either. So do we know the difference between gratification of desires and true positivity? Have you had an experience where conditions have changed and then you just aren't the person that you thought you were? And the Buddha replies, I have a fertile mind. This is one of his arguments against Dhaniya's security. I have a fertile mind. So I don't know the translation. I forgot to look at the translation for this, but actually one could be, he could be describing the Kalachitta, the mind made ready, yeah, which Ratnaguna brings out a lot in his study events, doesn't he? The mind made ready for the Dharma. So a mind no longer rigid and set, more receptive. When we get ordained, often our ordination is surrounded by a lot of whiteness. And that whiteness is because you're trying to create a situation where the white, clean cloth will take the dye of the Dharma really, really well. And that's what we're trying to do with the Kalachitta, the mind made fertile. The soil is ready for planting. It's going to take the seed of the Dharma very, very well. So where does your rigid mind show up? And where does a more open, receptive mind show up? Yeah, so the Buddha's living in an open hut, like the Udana. So he's not trying to keep things out. And Bhante talks quite a bit about how Dhaniya's trying to keep out the rain, but he's existentially trying to keep out everything that's dangerous, anything that might threaten us. So people we don't like, conditions we don't like, whatever, his cows running away. All the time he's trying to shore up his security. And that would be interesting to explore what kind of consciousness you create by that continually shoring up your security. That's where the rigid mind shows up, isn't it? That's where the rigid mind is. Yeah. So then the seminar is discussing the difference between disgruntlement or disillusionment, or being disillusioned. So disgruntlement, and Bhante brings this out in a few of his seminars. I think you get it in the Yogi's Joy, for instance, in the seminar on the Yogi's Joy. Disgruntlement is where we're not getting our preferences and we feel disgruntled, you know? We want oat barista milk rather than just unsweetened soy milk. And that's our disgruntlement showing up, yeah? But disillusionment means we've got disillusioned in the world, which is it's like we're not trying to make things work so much. We're not trying to make samsara work for us. We're actually trying to function in the world or function in samsara without that being a reference point. It's a spiritual motivation. I remember a good Kalyana Mitra to me said once, are you polishing the wheel or are you trying to leave the wheel? So there's a lot of things we can do through disgruntlement that just makes the wheel of life roll on much more smoothly for us. And our practice of the Dharma creates sometimes a very smooth life because we can mostly get through life quite easily. We're fairly cheerful, positive, clear. We have integrity. That makes it for an easier life. Yeah? But to become disillusioned means something else. It means being quite, inspired to actually want to leave that world, leave that particular system. Not be motivated by those sort of worldly aims so much. And this is a continual path. So all of these verses are about renunciation, you know, disillusionment, cool down the fire, letting go of certain mental events. It's all about renunciation. And again, sadhana practice is all about renunciation. It's about us sitting with a true refuge and letting go of false refuges and standing in that relationship with the Buddha. There's this beautiful phrase which I learnt many years ago about renunciation. I gathered a lot of phrases and slogans about renunciation. So this is one of them. Renunciation is obedience to the call of the heart. Renunciation is obedience to the call of the heart. In other words, you practice renunciation because you're trying to do something you really want to do. And this is what we're trying to do in sadhana. We're trying to let go of something because we're trying to make a connection with something else that we really want to do. So it's not renunciation for its own sake. When you visualize the Buddha, you're visualizing a monk, if you like, in renunciant's clothes, carrying a begging bowl. There's quite a lot of message around renunciation there. As somebody said to me recently, and as I've said to other people, it looks a bit like a lifestyle choice. So you're signing up for a lifestyle choice, and that isn't what the Buddha is trying to communicate. The Buddha is trying to communicate, give up things that don't really satisfy you, and really turn towards something that does satisfy you. And then we're up against complacency, our tendency to settle down at every level, our tendency to limit ourselves. There's quite a lot of demands made by life, on us by life, and sometimes we resent that. You know, when life asks us to go further, we can get angry at life because of that. One of the ways I practice in sadhana, one of the ways I practice with the begging bowl, the image of the begging bowl, is just to eat whatever lands in the begging bowl. And what that means is whatever life throws at me, you just have to eat your way through it. Yeah? So you might already know what you do not want anyone to put in your begging bowl, and maybe it's already arrived in there. And just notice, you know, what your relationship to it is. You know, how much you resent that, or how much you want something to be different, how much you resist that. And Bhante says later on in the seminar, he's saying, what is human life really for? What should our ideal of the goal be? What are the true possibilities of human life? So he's asking us to ask these questions. What are we really here for? What do we really want our life to be? Yesterday in my discussion group, we were talking about sadhana, and we were saying, there was a few teachers in the group, and we were saying, what is the lesson plan for a sadhana? Like, what are you really trying to get to? And it's not just that you're trying to visualize a yellow robed figure very, very well. You're trying to get somewhere with that sadhana practice. So where are you really trying to get to? Where are you really trying to get to with your life? And then the Buddha says, I dwell one night beside the Mahi, so beside the river. So Dhaniya is saying he's living his life beside the river, but the Buddha's just saying, I'm dwelling one night here. And maybe what he's saying is, no human being can say that they're going to live forever, or no being can even say that they're going to live longer than one night. And in another seminar, Bhante said, you need to meditate as if you're going to die tomorrow, but you need to live as if you're going to live forever. And these two things give you a different quality. Like, meditate as if you're going to die tomorrow is very strong motivating force, like urgency. But then live as if you're going to live forever. What does that mean? Sitting back, relaxing, allowing life more to come to you. So how do we relate to the kind of precariousness of life, if you like? How do we live with insecurity? You know, do we live with it? Do we live with insecurity and precariousness of life in a way that's not very helpful? Or is it that we just don't engage with it at all? Yeah, so often at the basis of our reactions is this desperate sort of need for security. I've been quite surprised when I've done this work. Like, I have a strong reaction to somebody, and then I think, oh, that's because of this. And I look at that. And I think, oh, that's because of this. And then I look at that. And then I realize, oh, this is just because I've got a view about myself that is somebody who's always really helpful. Let's put it that way. Let's say I've got a view that I'm really helpful and this is what my security is based on. And all that reaction that happened between me and this other person was based on that grip, that major grip of trying to create security in my life in a very precarious situation. And can we really let ourselves experience sort of existentially what it's really like, what reality is really like? I think at the beginning of all this coronavirus episode, a few months ago, when it became more apparent what we were working with, we were more edgy in our lives. I don't think we're like that now. We've normalized it a lot more, but we were much, much more edgy. And can you remember what that felt like? Okay, enough.